Hello, I'm David Plazas, the Opinion and Engagement Director for the Tennessean. Today I have the pleasure of having Alice Rolli, candidate for the 2023 election for mayor here in Metro Nashville, Davidson County. Alice, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. We are probably 90-ish days away from Election Day, so glad to be here. Thank you.
So tell the viewers, please, why are you running for mayor?
Yeah, I'm running for mayor because I wanted to serve fellow Nashville residents in this pretty pivotal moment of growth for the city, but also of opportunity for the city. I really believe that we can love Nashville and love Tennessee, and that we can work on improving accountability in our city government around things like our first graders reading, around things like our public safety, and managing some of this growth that we're seeing.
And growth has certainly been what we've seen here in Nashville. It's been named a supernova city by the Urban Land Institute. What are some of the ideas that you have and the things you're hearing about how to manage this growth better?
Yeah, well, I think I think that there are a lot of the pain points we know and we see are around transit. There are some good things that are happening around improving traffic signalization, around increasing some of our bus lines through the neighborhoods instead of coming down to the downtown. There's lots of investments going on there. But probably the biggest lurking challenge there in transportation and transit is a mayor who's ready to quarterback the regional plan and help the region work together on securing some transit funding. The other issue I think on growth that we're seeing quite a bit of is people feeling like Nashville is maybe becoming too alike other big cities with some of our crime. We've had more than 100 homicides a year for the last 3 years, and I know people come here for the sound of Music City, to be the sound of the Fisk Jubilee Singers and country music, and I don't think that they want it to be the sound of the sirens of 100 homicides. So those are some pretty big challenges, and ones that I feel ready to tackle.
We were recording this on May 4th, and a few weeks ago, very recently I should say, was the vote on the stadium deal, which would allow for a new stadium for the Tennessee Titans and the possibility of enacting the East Bank vision. Would you talk a little bit about what happens next? If you're elected the 10th mayor of Metro Nashville, what is your responsibility at that point, and what do you do moving forward?
Right. Well, the council did, and the mayor has included in this capital, in sort of spending plan and spending projections, pretty overwhelmingly supported that. I don't see the job of the 10th mayor to spend their time undoing the previous mayor's commitment. I see it as receiving the baton and getting the very best that we can. I do appreciate in Mayor Cooper's deal that unlike some previous mayors, he did create a provision that if costs went over, that the Titans would be responsible for them. I am looking forward to, and I think it will be a pretty pivotal moment to work on the East Bank, to solve some issues as now us owning that land instead of many mayors giving land away, getting that back under Metro control, and being able to look at some things around transit and some affordable housing that could surround the Titans redevelopment.
One of the issues that has come this past year because of the legislative session is the adversarial relationship between the state legislature and Metro government. What can the mayor do, the future mayor do, to correct that or to address that? What would be the appropriate steps?
Yeah, well, I think it saddens me as a Nashville native and a lover of all things Tennessee that it has gotten where it is. But I don't believe, I believe as a city we've been in a lot harder places before, right? And there's points in our history that remind us we can get through this. I believe first and foremost it is recognizing that Nashville is in a really difficult situation from a balance sheet. We today in Nashville have more debt and pay about $410 million servicing our debt when the entire state of Tennessee pays about $320 million. So we have a legislature that is worried genuinely. I don't know if they're always doing the best job at articulating what's sort of underpinning that worry, that we take some different direction, right? Truth in Accounting has Nashville in the mid-60s out of 75 metros for our fiscal position. We earn a grade of F. We have about 4 times the debt per resident in Davidson County than in Memphis, right? So I think that the state is right to be worried about some things. Now, are either side working through that productively? Probably not. I'm a mom of boys, and I'm watching these guys get into it some days and think everyone needs a timeout. But I would welcome the opportunity to repair that relationship. And I actually believe that there are many members of the legislature and many of our regional county mayors that want to work with us, because we are not going to solve issues around transit, don't know the county line, issues around crime, they don't see the county line, issues around our most vulnerable residents, our elderly residents, our residents who are on Medicaid or Medicare. Those dollars that are funding for so many of our vulnerable residents, we've got to work with the state effectively in a very solutions-oriented way, instead of a sort of a protest sort of Instagram celebrity type of a way. And I think that as the only person in the Republican Party, and I don't think it's just a party issue, but I actually think it's having the restraint to respect that we are part of a family in Tennessee, and that we need to find ways to work together to solve some of these issues.
One of the issues that I've followed over the years that I've been here almost 9 years, is this tension between tourists and residents. Mm-hmm. And many mayors have brought that up. Mayor Cooper certainly did during his campaign in 2019. Who do you serve, and how do you balance that appropriately given the constraints that we have fiscally and legally? Mm-hmm.
Well, and it's actually a really good question. I think a lot of the frustration with tourism in the downtown core in particular, that's actually a sort of a good moment to say our downtown business owners actually got so frustrated too with how we as a city were not managing the crime and the additional challenges around downtown, that they went out and petitioned the state to create their own police area. Downtown Nashville today has its own police district that is operated by officers who have arrest provisions, but are not Metro Nashville officers. That tells us something about how frustrated our business owners are, that they went to the state to be able to do that. They went and levied additional funds to be able to do that. And so I think the downtown sits there frequently as maybe a moment that sort of tells us how frustrated even the business owners are with managing crime and growth downtown. So.
And you alluded to this issue in a previous question about affordable housing. Mm-hmm. That's certainly something that's top of mind. It was the number one issue during the Nashville Next planning process in 2015, mm-hmm. and continues to be in polling the number one issue for residents about mm-hmm. How do you afford to live here? What is attainable housing? Mm-hmm. What should the city's role be in producing, preserving, or facilitating that? Mm-hmm.
Well, the city can have some role, and is, I think, around both permanent supportive housing for homeless as one category, then sort of category up around the funding of the Barnes Fund and other subsidized housing stock. But also it is looking at how we are making it easier or harder to get more housing stock online. Cities typically are trailing in their ability to keep up with the private sector. So one thing that the state legislature, and I think Senator Yarborough carried this legislation, was to start to say, if we don't have enough electrical inspectors on staff in Metro, and that's causing a backlog for us to be able to open housing, open new buildings, how do we address that backlog? And some new legislation will allow us to basically use other licensed electricians to speed that process up. Because we've got $5 billion of construction permits actively open in the county. And if we have an office that was built for 3 years ago with only, $1 billion, $2 billion, they're not able to keep up. So some of the affordability, right, is speed to market, supply and demand, being able to open up those new homes. But I also think, and I think there's pretty strong agreement that we have to look at all of the tools that are available, right? If it's the Barnes Fund or tools available to MDHA, and to probably put on our economic development hats and to start to say, are there ways to help spur the faster creation of more attainable or affordable housing? We're not alone, right, as a city in this challenge. But an aspect of it is obviously just building more dense housing along a lot of our transit spines as well. So.
Well, one of the priorities for you that you've written in your questionnaire, you've talked about this, has been about education and reading. As if you become the mayor of Nashville, how would you approach that challenge? Because education makes up about 40% of the city budget.
It does, yeah. I think it's passed for the last couple of years. We're at like 1.1 or 1.2 billion dollars that we are spending in education, and it is our single most important economic development lever, right? I think public safety is our first job as city government, make sure that we're a safe city. But in terms of our job from economic development, it is making sure our kids can read. If our kids cannot read by 3rd grade, they are not able to learn for the rest of their educational career. So when we talk about a goal for every 1st grader reading, it is actually saying, I think in the clearest way, how do you hold someone accountable? So frequently people who are serving in public life are serving for 8 years, right, do 2 terms. A child who is born when I'm the mayor will be and needs to graduate or needs to finish 1st grade. You don't graduate from 1st grade, but being able to read, right? And actually holding yourself accountable to that, where you're saying to every nonprofit partner, every school, every way that a school is organized in the city, we do have schools, publicly funded schools across the city, that are shattering the myth that our kids cannot read. And if we're doing it well, we should do it everywhere. So I believe that ultimately economic development all starts in early literacy. And this is somebody who has been the assistant commissioner in economic development for Governor Bill Haslam, authored the plan that won State of Tennessee successive and unprecedented State of the Year awards, and somebody who's been a high school teacher in our nation's 2nd largest school system. And so I don't say that as a person who hasn't rolled up their sleeves and tried and looked at it from the ribbon cutting economic development side to the actual structural, what moves the needles for families. What moves people from the back of the line to the front is education. And that is something that as a city, if we don't get right, what are we doing? We're building these glass towers for other people's kids to come and work there if we can't get our kids ready for 21st century skills.
As we near the conclusion of our conversation, I always like to ask our candidates a little bit about the places they recommend tourists come to or visitors come to. If you had top 2 or 3 places that people can't miss out when they're here in Nashville, what would you say?
So the first would be Delgado Guitars, owned by Manuel Delgado over in East Nashville. And he is a 3rd generation luthier. So if we think about Music City as being a place for musicians, we should also think about who makes the music instruments. And he's got a great place, it's called the Music Makers Stage, and you can check out shows there, definitely off the beaten track. I would also encourage people to go to Fort Negley. Fort Negley is our city's Ellis Island. You know, we led and got 5,000 citizens to sign on when a former mayor was effectively giving that away to put 27 buildings there. So I think at Fort Negley you can remember that our city in the Civil War to other chapters has had really hard things and gotten through them. And then the last place I would encourage people to go is Radnor Lake, and the top point on Radnor Lake is Gagne Ridge, and that is named for my great-grandfather. It is a state park, and our residents in Davidson County benefit from that because we take the approach that working with the state to create assets that benefit our entire community. And I sort of think that he's sitting up there looking over the city and saying our best days are ahead.
I want to thank you very much, Alice Rolli, for being on this program, and congratulations on your mayoral run. We appreciate those who seek public service. We want to thank the audience. Remember some key dates. July 5th is the deadline to register to vote. July 15th is the start of early voting. Then August 3rd is the municipal election here in Nashville for mayor, vice mayor, and Metro Council members. Keep up with all the news at Tennessean.com. And again, we thank you for your time and investment and being good citizens.